He was a titan of industry, a man who had everything billions power, and a beautiful wife about to give him his first child. She was his perfect partner, standing by him as he built his empire. But in the sterile, unforgiving light of the delivery room, a single catastrophic mistake was about to detonate a bomb of betrayal. He brought her, his mistress. What a sharp-eyed nurse uttered next wasn't just a medical observation. It was a verdict that would leave everyone in that room and an entire dynasty utterly frozen. Get ready, because this isn't just a story of infidelity. It's a saga of lies, ambition, and a truth so explosive it will make your jaw drop. The penthouse apartment atop Stirling Tower was a monument to Damien Stirling's ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a god's-eye view of the sprawling metropolis below each glittering light, a testament to his conquests in the cutthroat world of international finance. His wife, Eliza Stirling, was the perfect complement to his steely persona. With her old-money grace, philanthropic endeavors, and serene beauty. She was the velvet glove on his iron fist. Their life, meticulously curated for magazine spreads and society pages, was an enviable tapestry of galas, exotic vacations, and whispered reverence. Tonight, however, the opulence felt suffocating to Eliza. Her due date had been a week ago, and every twinge, every Braxton Hicks contraction sent a jolt of anxious anticipation through her. Damien, for all his global power, was surprisingly flustered by the impending arrival of their first child. He'd been pacing their vast living room, barking orders into his phone about a hostile takeover in Singapore one minute, then hovering over Eliza asking if she needed more water or fewer cushions the next. "Darling, please," Eliza had said, managing a weak smile. "The baby will come when it's ready. All this nervous energy isn't helping anyone." Damien ran a hand through his perfectly styled dark hair, his usually commanding blue eyes clouded with a rare uncertainty. I know. It's just a lot. The merger, the new product launch for Stirling Innovations, and now this. It's all happening at once. Eliza's smile faltered. He made the birth of their child sound like another item on his overwhelming agenda. She pushed the thought away. He was stressed. He'd be a wonderful father once the baby was actually here. He had to be. The first real contraction hit her like a rogue wave, stealing her breath and arching her back. "Damien," she gasped. "It's time. Call Dr. Alistair. Get the bag." Panic flashed across Damien's face, quickly masked by his usual take-charge demeanor. He made the calls, his voice crisp and authoritative, a stark contrast to the trembling in his hands as he helped Eliza to the private elevator that descended to their waiting limousine. Their destination, the Serafina Women's Hospital and Birthing Center, an exclusive, state-of-the-art facility, renowned for its discretion and luxury, a place where the city's elite came to welcome their heirs. Eliza had personally overseen the selection, right down to the thread count of the fret linens in the birthing suite. The ride was a blur of pain, and Damien's attempts at reassurance, which sounded more like business negotiations. "Everything is under control, Eliza. The best suite, the best doctor. I've insured it." As they swept into the private entrance of the Serafina, a phalanx of discreet staff materialized. Eliza was quickly settled into birthing suite Omega, a room that looked more like a 5-star hotel suite than a hospital room, with soft lighting, abstract art, and a private adjoining lounge for Damien. Dr. Alistair, a man whose calm demeanor had soothed generations of nervous mothers, confirmed Eliza was in active labor. "It might be a while yet, Mrs. Stirling. Try to relax. Mr. Stirling, you can wait here or in the lounge." Damien kissed Eliza's forehead. "I'll just make a few urgent calls, my love. Keep things running. I'll be right here for you." He squeezed her hand, perhaps a little too tightly, and retreated to the lounge, his phone already pressed to his ear. Eliza breathed deeply, trying to focus on the techniques from her hypnobirthing classes. Hours passed. The contractions intensified, each one a monumental effort. Nurses came and went, their voices soft, their movements efficient. She called for Damien a few times, and he'd appear looking harried, offer a few words of encouragement, and then excuse himself again, murmuring about critical updates. Then, as the pain reached a crescendo, and Dr. Alistair announced it was almost time to push the door to the birthing suite opened, Eliza, through a haze of agony and exhaustion, expected to see Damien's anxious, supportive face. Instead, a woman stood silhouetted against the hallway light. A woman Eliza knew, but not in this context. Not here. Not now. It was Isabella Rossi. Isabella with her fiery red hair, figure-hugging designer dress that seemed wildly inappropriate for a hospital, and the scent of expensive, heady perfume. Chanel No. 5. Eliza registered with a sickening lurch that always seemed to cling to her. Isabella, the ambitious young VP from Sterling Innovations' European division, a woman whose name had been whispered a little too often in conjunction with Damien's during his extended business trips. Damien rushed in behind her, his face a mask of utter shock and dawning horror. "Eliza, there's been a mistake. A terrible mistake." Isabella looked just as bewildered, her eyes wide, as she took in the scene. Eliza, sweaty and exposed in the throes of childbirth. "Damien, what is going on? You said it was an emergency, a private medical matter for you." Her voice trailed off. Confusion, warring with a nascent understanding. Eliza stared, her mind struggling to process the impossible. The pain of the contraction was nothing compared to the icy blade of betrayal that pierced through her. Her husband, his mistress, in her delivery room. "Get her out!" Eliza finally screamed, the sound raw and animalistic, tearing from her throat. The birthing suite, moments before a sanctuary of impending joy, had become a theatre of acute, surreal horror. Dr. Alistair, ever the professional but visibly startled, stepped forward. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps it would be best if your associate waited outside." Damien looked from Eliza's contorted face, a mask of pain and fury, to Isabella's stunned, pale countenance, and then back again. He was a man drowning, his carefully constructed world imploding. "Isabella, please just wait in the lounge. I can explain. This wasn't... I didn't mean... You didn't mean..." Eliza shrieked, another contraction gripping her. "You didn't mean to bring your whore to the birth of our child." The word ugly and sharp hung in the air, making even the seasoned nurses flinch. Isabella recoiled, as if struck. "Whore, Damien, what is she talking about? You told me your wife was infertile, that you were separated, that the private medical matter was a consultation about your options for fatherhood." Her voice rose, laced with dawning outrage and a different kind of betrayal. Eliza's world, tilted infertile, separated. A maelstrom of questions and accusations swirled in her mind, but the immediate overwhelming agony of labor pulled her back to the physical reality. "Ah, Mrs. Sterling, you need to focus," Dr. Alistair said firmly, trying to regain control of the medical situation. "We need to deliver this baby safely." One of the nurses, a sturdy, no-nonsense woman in her late 50s named Agnes Kowalski, with eyes that had seen too much of life's dramas unfold in delivery rooms, gently but firmly guided Isabella towards the door. "Ma'am, if you please. This is not the time or place." Isabella, looking utterly lost and now deeply humiliated, allowed herself to be ushered out, but not before casting one last venomous glare at Damien. "You will explain this, Damien. Every last lie." The door clicked shut, leaving a chasm of poisonous silence, broken only by Eliza's ragged breathing. Damien approached the bed, his hands outstretched. "Eliza, my love, I swear. It was a miscommunication, a catastrophic error. I was calling my assistant Veronica to bring some updated files from the office. And then I must have... Isabella's number is right next to hers in my VIP contacts. I was stressed, not thinking. I just said, 'Emergency, my office contact, get to the Serafina.' And before I could clarify..." His explanation was so ludicrous, so insulting in its flimsiness, that Eliza almost laughed, a hysterical sound that caught in her throat. "Your VIP contacts, is that what she is?" "Damien." "Very, very important." "Prostitute. Eliza, please, that's not fair. It's complicated." "Complicated." She panted, the urge to push becoming undeniable. "No, Damien. It's quite simple. You're a liar and a cheat." Dr. Alastair intervened again. "Mr. Sterling, your wife needs to concentrate. Perhaps you should step out for a moment, too." "No!" Eliza cried, a surprising surge of defiant energy coursing through her. "No. He stays. He will watch. He will see what he has desecrated." Damien looked like a man condemned, his face ashen. He stood frozen by the side of the bed, a spectator to a miracle he had irrevocably tainted. The next hour was a primal struggle. Eliza, fueled by a tempest of rage, grief, and adrenaline, pushed with a ferocity that surprised everyone. She channeled every ounce of her betrayal into the physical act of bringing her child into the world. Damien stood by, silent and shaken, occasionally muttering apologies that Eliza pointedly ignored. And then, with a final desperate cry from Eliza, the baby was born. A lusty wail filled the room, a sound of pure, untainted life amidst the wreckage of adult deceptions. "It's a boy." Dr. Alastair announced, his voice warm, despite the preceding chaos. "A healthy, beautiful boy." He placed the crying infant onto Eliza's chest. Tears streamed down Eliza's face, mingling with sweat, tears of relief, exhaustion, and a profound, shattering sorrow. She looked at her son, his tiny, perfect face, and a fierce, protective love surged through her, eclipsing even her rage at Damien. This innocent child deserved none of this. Damien leaned forward, a flicker of something, hope, awe, in his eyes. He's perfect, Eliza. Our son." Eliza barely looked at him. She was captivated by her baby. Nurse Agnes Kowalski, who had been quietly and efficiently tending to mother and child, took the baby gently to a nearby warming station to perform the initial checks. Dr. Alastair was attending to Eliza. The room was momentarily calmer, the storm having momentarily passed, leaving behind a fragile peace. Damien moved closer to the warming station, peering at his son. "He looks like you, Eliza. Your eyes, I think." Nurse Agnes continued her work, checking the baby's vitals, measuring him, weighing him. She was meticulous. After a moment, she made a small, almost imperceptible sound, a soft Damien, desperate for any interaction, any sign of normalcy, asked, "Is everything all right, nurse?" "Nurse." Agnes looked up, her gaze steady and unnervingly direct. She looked from the baby to Damien, and then briefly, almost sympathetically, towards Eliza, who was now watching a knot of apprehension tightening in her chest. "Well, Mr. Sterling." Nurse Agnes began, her voice calm, but carrying an undeniable weight, each word dropping into the suddenly silent room like a stone. "The baby is doing wonderfully. Strong APGAR scores. But there's something rather particular." Damien frowned. "Particular? What do you mean?" Nurse Agnes held up a small card where she'd noted the infant's details. "His blood type. It's AB negative." A pause. Dr. Alastair looked up, a slight frown creasing his brow. Eliza, though exhausted, felt a strange prickle of unease. She knew her blood type A, positive. She vaguely remembered Damien mentioning his during a medical checkup for insurance years ago. "AB negative," Damien repeated, nonplussed. "Is that rare? Is it a problem?" Nurse Agnes's gaze didn't waver from Damien. "It is the rarest blood type, Mr. Sterling, and it can be a problem if a transfusion is ever needed, but that's not the particularity I was referring to." She paused, letting the silence stretch, her eyes boring into Damien. Then she delivered the line that would shatter everything that remained. "The particular thing, Mr. Sterling," Nurse Agnes stated, her voice devoid of accusation, yet utterly damning, "is that with your documented O-positive blood type on file with this hospital from your pre-admission physical, and Mrs. Sterling being A-positive, it is genetically impossible for you to be this child's father." The world stopped. The only sound was the gentle hum of the medical equipment, and the baby's soft cooing oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in Sweet Omega. Damien stared, his face draining of all color, leaving it a ghastly white. Eliza pushed herself up on her elbows, her heart hammering against her ribs, her disbelieving gaze fixed on the nurse, then on Damien, then on her child. Impossible. The word echoed in the cavernous silence of the delivery room. The silence that followed Nurse Agnes's pronouncement was thick enough to choke on. It stretched for an eternity, broken only by the soft, innocent gurgles of the newborn, now swaddled and oblivious in the warming station. Damien Sterling, a man accustomed to commanding boardrooms and bending markets to his will, looked utterly decimated. His mouth opened and closed silently like a fish gasping for air. The color had drained from his face, leaving it a waxy, unhealthy hue. That's absurd," he finally stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. "There must be a mistake, a mix-up in the records." "Your records?" Nurse Agnes Kowalski stood her ground, her expression unreadable but firm. "Miss Sterling hospital records are meticulously kept, especially for blood typing. Your pre-admission physical 2 months ago confirmed your type as O-positive. We reconfirm a mother's blood type upon admission for labor. Mrs. Sterling is A-positive. Basic Mendelian genetics. Mr. Sterling, an O parent and an A parent can produce offspring with A or O blood types. AB blood type requires one parent to contribute an A allele and the other a B allele. Neither you nor Mrs. Sterling, based on these records, possess a B allele to pass on." Dr. Alastair, who had been silently observing, cleared his throat. "Agnes is correct, Damien. The genetics are quite straightforward. While extremely rare errors in lab testing can occur, they are highly improbable with modern methods." He looked at Eliza with profound sympathy. "Eliza, perhaps we can discuss this later. You need to rest." But Eliza was already pushing herself further upright, her eyes blazing with a new, terrifying understanding fixed on Damien. The betrayal of the mistress in the delivery room was a shallow wound compared to this. This was a chasm, a fundamental lie at the very core of their marriage, their future, this child. Damien. Her voice was deceptively calm, dangerously so. Is there something you neglected to tell me about your genetics? He flinched. Eliza, this is a shock to me, too. I don't understand it. The nurse must be wrong. We'll get another test, a proper paternity test. His desperation was palpable, his usual arrogance completely stripped away. Oh, we will get a paternity test, Damien. Eliza said, her voice like chipped ice. We most certainly will. But I think deep down, you already know what it will say, don't you? Suddenly the door to the suite burst open, and Isabella Rossi stormed back, in her face a mask of fury. She must have been listening outside. What in God's name is going on in here? I heard shouting about blood types, Damien. You told me Eliza couldn't conceive. You said you were desperate for a child, and she was the obstacle. Damien whirled around, seeing Isabella as another nail in his coffin. Isabella, get out. This is not your concern, not my concern. She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. I've just been humiliated in front of hospital staff, accused of being a whore. And now I hear you might not even be the father of the child you supposedly sired with your infertile wife. After you told me we would have children, that you were building a future for us. I think it's very much my concern. The scene was descending into pure chaos. Nurses were exchanging alarmed glances. Doctor, Alistair looked like he wished the ground would swallow him whole. Eliza watched the interplay between Damien and Isabella with a chilling detachment. The pain was so immense, it had almost numbed her. These two people, architect and instrument of her life's greatest betrayal, were now squabbling over the ruins. Enough! Eliza's voice cut through the clamour, imbued with a strength she didn't know she possessed. All heads turned to her. She was pale, exhausted, but her eyes held a steely resolve. Isabella, he lied to you just as he lied to me. Clearly, Damien Sterling is a man of many fictions. She paused, then turned her gaze to her husband. Damien, I want you out of this room. Now. Eliza, please, let's talk about this. We can sort it out. There is nothing to sort out, she stated, her voice flat. You have brought another woman to the birth of my child. You have, it seems, fundamentally misrepresented the nature of our relationship and your ability to even be his father. What more is there to say? But the baby, our son. Damien gestured helplessly towards the warming station. He is my son, Eliza corrected, her voice unwavering. And until a DNA test proves otherwise, which I highly doubt it will, he is mine and mine alone. Nurse Kowalski, she said, turning to the nurse who had delivered the fateful news. Could you please ensure Mr. Sterling and Ms. Rossi leave the premises? Or at least this wing of the hospital. I require peace. Nurse Agnes, who had seen her share of drama, but perhaps nothing quite on this scale of wealth and deceit, nodded curtly. Certainly, Mrs. Sterling. She looked pointedly at Damien and Isabella. If you would both come with me. Isabella surprisingly seemed to deflate. The fight went out of her, replaced by a dawning look of disgust aimed at Damien. You pathetic excuse for a man, she muttered, then turned on her heel and walked out, not even waiting for the nurse. Damien lingered, his face a mess of conflicting emotions, disbelief, fear, and a sliver of his old manipulative charm trying to surface. Eliza, don't do this. Think of our life, everything we've built, our friends, our family, the company. The company. Eliza laughed, a hollow, broken sound. Is that what this is about now, Damien? Your image, your precious, sterling innovations. You should have thought of that before you decided to weave this disgusting tapestry of lies. She gestured for Nurse Agnes to proceed. With a final defeated look, Damien allowed himself to be escorted out by Nurse Agnes. The door closed behind them, leaving Eliza alone in the vast, luxurious suite with her newborn son and the echoing pronouncement, genetically possible. Dr. Alistair approached her cautiously. Eliza, I am so profoundly sorry you had to go through this. We will arrange for a blood sample from the baby for DNA testing immediately, and one from you. We'll need a sample from Mr. Sterling as well, if he consents. He'll consent, Eliza said, her voice hard. Or I'll get a court order. He will not escape the truth of this. She looked down at the tiny, perfect being cradled in the hospital bassinet that had been wheeled beside her bed. His eyes were closed, his little chest rising and falling rhythmically. He was so innocent, so unaware of the storm that had just erupted around his arrival. A new wave of emotion washed over Eliza. Not grief this time, but a fierce, unyielding determination. She had been betrayed, humiliated, and her entire life had been revealed as a sham. But looking at her son, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would protect him. She would uncover every lie, and she would build a new life for them, free from the poison of Damien Sterling. The gilded cage had shattered, and Eliza Sterling, for the first time in a long time, felt a flicker of something that might one day become freedom. But first there were battles to be fought, truths to be unearthed, and a millionaire's empire of deceit to dismantle. The hours following the cataclysm in birthing Suite Omega were a blur for Eliza. Procedures were done, forms were signed, and through it all, she held her son, whom she quietly named Leo, close. Leo, the lion. He would need a lion's strength, and she would be his lioness. The hospital staff, from Dr. Alistair down to the orderlies, treated her with a mixture of profound sympathy and hushed awe. News of the dramatic events, despite the Seraphina's legendary discretion, was undoubtedly already seeping through the hospital's internal grapevine. Millionaire scions' illicit affairs and paternity bombshells were the stuff of legend. Eliza's first call, once she was settled in her private recovery room, a new suite far from the tainted memories of Omega, was to her mother, Victoria Thorne. Victoria, a woman of formidable composure and old-world steel, listened in stunned silence as Eliza recounted the events, her voice cracking only when she spoke of Leo's purity amidst the sordid mess. That bastard, Victoria finally hissed, her usual decorum momentarily fracturing. Eliza, my darling, I am on my way. You are not alone in this. We will face this, all of this, together. Within the hour, Victoria arrived, a whirlwind of Chanel tweed and righteous fury, a stark contrast to her daughter's exhausted pallor. But beneath Victoria's anger was a deep well of maternal love and support that Eliza desperately needed. The first thing, Victoria declared after cradling Leo with tears in her eyes, is a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. We need Marcus Thorne. Marcus Thorne was Eliza's uncle, Victoria's younger brother, a bulldog of a divorce attorney, renowned for dismantling the finances and reputations of philandering husbands with surgical precision. He was expensive, ruthless, and fiercely protective of his family. And the DNA test. Victoria continued pacing the luxurious room. Dr. Alistair said Damien's sample is required. Has that cretin agreed? I haven't spoken to him since. Eliza trailed off the image of Damien's contoured face as he was escorted out, flashing in her mind. Dr. Alistair's office was going to contact him. As if on cue, Dr. Alistair knocked and entered, his expression grave. Eliza, Mrs. Thorne. I've just spoken with Mr. Sterling's lawyer. Mr. Sterling is disputing the hospital's initial findings regarding his blood type. He claims our records are erroneous. He has, however, agreed to a full DNA paternity test on the condition it's performed by an independent lab of his, choosing alongside one of our choosing. Victoria snorted. Of course he's disputing it. He'll try to muddy the waters, buy time, spin a narrative. Typical Damien. Independent lab fine. As long as Marcus approves it, and we have oversight. Eliza felt a flicker of her old self, the astute woman who had once advised Damien on business strategies. He's trying to control the narrative, Mother. If he can cast doubt on the hospital on Nurse Agnes, he thinks he can salvage his reputation. His reputation is already in tatters as far as this family is concerned, Victoria said grimly. And it will be publicly if he tries to fight you on this, Eliza. Over the next few days, the Serafina became Eliza's fortress. Leo was a calm, beautiful baby, his presence a soothing balm on Eliza's raw nerves. She focused on him, memorizing every tiny feature, every soft sound he made. He was her anchor in the raging storm. Marcus Thorne visited his sharp eyes, taking in every detail, his questions precise. He listened to Eliza's account without interruption, his expression hardening with each revelation. The infidelity is grounds enough for divorce, Eliza, he said finally, his voice surprisingly gentle. The public humiliation he caused you by bringing that woman, Isabella Rossi was it, to the delivery room is egregious. But this paternity issue, this changes the entire landscape. If Leo is not his biological son, the prenuptial agreement might be contested by him in unforeseen ways, especially concerning child support and inheritance, though your own family's wealth provides a significant shield. Eliza had almost forgotten the prenup, a document Damien had insisted upon, drafted by his shark-like corporate lawyers. At the time, it had seemed a mere formality, a sensible precaution for a man of his immense wealth. Now it was another potential battlefield. Damien knew about the prenup's clauses regarding infidelity on his part. They're quite punitive for him. Eliza mused, a thought striking her. Is it possible? Could he have known he wasn't O-positive? Could he have deliberately misled me about his ability to be a father, knowing that if I had an affair, and the child wasn't his, it would give him grounds to break the prenup more favorably? Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's a Machiavellian thought, Eliza, and not beyond the realm of possibility for a man like Damien Sterling. If he suspected sterility on his own part, or simply wanted an out from the marriage while retaining his assets. It's a convoluted theory, but one we should explore. We need to dig into Damien's entire medical history, not just what the Serafina has on file. Flashbacks assailed Eliza during the quiet nights in the hospital. Damien, early in their marriage, casually mentions he was O-positive during a conversation about blood donation drives. Damien subtly deflecting conversations about starting a family for years, citing business pressures. Damien finally agreeing, but with a strange lack of enthusiasm that she had attributed to his general awkwardness around emotional subjects. And then there was Isabella Rossi. How long had that affair been going on? What promises had he made her? The claim that Eliza was infertile and they were separated, it painted a picture of a calculated long-term deception. A few days later, as Eliza prepared to leave the hospital with Leo, a small, exquisitely wrapped package arrived for her. There was no card. Inside, nestled on a bed of silk, was a single, perfect white orchid and a small, velvet-covered Chanel jewelry box. With trembling fingers, Eliza opened it. It contained a delicate diamond pendant, a new design she vaguely recalled seeing months ago, one she hadn't expressed particular interest in. It had to be from Damien, a peace offering, an apology. Or just another calculated gesture, an attempt to remind her of the gilded life he provided Victoria. Seeing the package, scoffed. Trinkets. Does he think a piece of jewelry can erase this magnitude of betrayal? Send it back, Eliza. Or better yet, let Marcus's team catalogue it as evidence of his attempts at manipulation. Eliza looked at the pendant, then at Leo, sleeping peacefully in his bassinet. The diamonds felt cold, lifeless. He doesn't understand, does he? She whispered. He thinks this is about money or pride. He doesn't understand that he broke something fundamental. He broke us. He broke me. But as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Damien Sterling hadn't broken her. He had inadvertently forged her anew. The Eliza who left the Serafina was not the same woman who had entered it. This Eliza had a purpose, a clarity and a strength she hadn't known she possessed. She was Leo's mother, and she would not be silenced or bought. The fight for truth for her son's future and for her own liberation had just begun. And what about Leo's biological father? The question loomed vast and terrifying. If not Damien, then who? Her mind, already reeling, shied away from that abyss. One battle at a time. First expose Damien's lie. Then and only then could she confront the other, potentially more complicated truth. The moment Eliza and Leo left the cloistered sanctuary of the Serafina, the storm truly broke. Damien Sterling, true to form, had not been idle. His formidable PR machine, usually reserved for smoothing over corporate scandals or burnishing his philanthropic image, went into overdrive. The official narrative, carefully leaked to select media outlets, was one of a joyous new father, temporarily overwhelmed, leading to a minor regrettable misunderstanding at the hospital, involving a business colleague who arrived at an inopportune moment. The more damaging whispers about blood types and paternity were dismissed as scurrilous rumors and hospital administrative errors, with threats of lawsuits against anyone who dared to print them. Damien himself was photographed, looking somber and paternal, leaving a high-end baby boutique with an ostentatiously large teddy bear. Eliza, ensconced in her mother's palatial Thorn estate, watched this charade with a mixture of cold fury and grim satisfaction. "He's predictable," she told Marcus Thorne during one of their strategy sessions in the sprawling library. "He thinks he can control this, just like he controls his company's stock price." Marcus, never one for theatrics, merely nodded. "Let him spin. The truth has a way of emerging, especially when it's tethered to a D test. Our independent lab and his chosen lab both received the samples this morning. We should have preliminary results within a week, full confirmation in 2. Damien, however, wasn't just relying on PR. He began a campaign of harassment, subtle at first, then increasingly blatant. Flowers arrived daily, dozens of them funereal in their profusion. His calls, which Eliza initially ignored, became incessant. Then came the emissaries, mutual friends, business associates, even a distant Sterling cousin, all delivering the same message. Reconcile. Think of the child. Think of the scandal. Think of what this will do to the Sterling legacy. He's trying to wear me down, Eliza told Victoria, her voice tight with frustration, as she arranged for yet another mountain of roses to be sent to a local hospice. He thinks I'm the same malleable wife he married. Show him you're not darling, Victoria advised, her eyes glinting. Marcus is preparing the divorce papers. Let him serve them. It's time to stop reacting and start acting. Meanwhile, Isabella Rossi was playing her own game. After her humiliating exit from the hospital, she had disappeared for a few days, licking her wounds. Then she resurfaced, not by contacting Damien, but by attempting to contact Eliza. She sent a carefully worded email expressing profound regret for her unwitting role in the unfortunate events and requesting a private meeting with Eliza woman to woman. Absolutely not, Victoria declared. She's trouble. She's likely looking for a payout from Damien and thinks you can help her leverage it, or she wants to gather information for him. Marcus was more pragmatic. It might be worth hearing what she has to say, Eliza. With a lawyer present, of course. She could be a valuable witness to Damien's deceptions, particularly his claims about your infertility and their supposed separation. Eliza, against her mother's better judgment, but with Marcus's cautious approval, agreed to meet Isabella. The meeting took place in Marcus Thorne's stark, intimidatingly modern law office, a neutral territory designed to put everyone on edge. Isabella Rossi. Without Damien Sterling by her side, seemed diminished, yet somehow more dangerous. Her fiery red hair was impeccably styled. Her designer suit exuded power, but her eyes held a calculating glint. Eliza's lawyer, a sharp associate from Marcus's firm, named Miss Chen, sat beside Eliza, while Isabella had come alone. Mrs. Sterling. Eliza. Isabella began, her voice smoother than Eliza remembered. Thank you for agreeing to see me. I want to reiterate how truly sorry I am for the distress I inadvertently caused. Damien, Mr. Sterling, completely misled me. Misled you about what exactly, Miss Rossi? Eliza asked, her tone cool and even. Isabella launched into a narrative of her own. She portrayed herself as a brilliant, ambitious executive who had been systematically targeted and seduced by Damien. He had, she claimed, painted Eliza as cold, uninterested in a physical relationship, and adamantly opposed to having children. He told me your marriage was a sham, a business arrangement. He said you were living separate lives and that divorce was imminent. He promised me a future, a family. He told you I was infertile, Eliza stated, watching Isabella closely. Yes, Isabella admitted, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. He said you had undergone treatments, all unsuccessful. He said he yearned for a child and that I was his hope for that. She dabbed at a perfectly dry eye with a tissue. To find out that you were not only pregnant, but in labor. It was a shock. A shock that led you to believe his ludicrous excuse for summoning you to my delivery room. Ms. Chen interjected dryly. Isabella flushed. I was confused. He was frantic on the phone, saying it was a personal medical emergency, and he needed me there for support. I don't know what I thought, but certainly not that. What do you want, Ms. Rossi? Eliza asked bluntly. Isabella leaned forward, her voice dropping conspiratorially. Damien is a liar and a manipulator, Eliza. He has used both of us. I have information. Emails, texts, recordings of his promises, his plans to divorce you, his disparaging remarks about you. Information that could be very useful to you in your proceedings. And what do you expect in return for this useful information? Miss Chen inquired, her pen poised. A clean break, Isabella said. I want to salvage my career. Damien is trying to blacklist me. He's furious I confronted him. I also believe I am owed compensation for the damage to my reputation and the emotional distress he caused by his deceptions. If I help you, perhaps you can ensure he makes things right for me, without a protracted public battle. Eliza felt a wave of revulsion. Isabella wasn't a contrite victim. She was an opportunist, trying to cut her losses and profit from the wreckage. So you're not here out of solidarity, Ms. Rossi. You're here to negotiate. Isabella's smile was thin. We're all survivors in Damien's world, Eliza. I'm merely trying to ensure my survival. He promised me things. He spoke of a significant settlement he was planning for you, one that would be less generous if you weren't cooperative. He also mentioned certain offshore accounts that he uses to keep assets hidden. Perhaps that information would be more valuable to you than to me. Offshore accounts, hidden assets. This was classic Damien. If you have concrete evidence of illegal financial activities, Ms. Rossi, you should take it to the authorities, Ms. Chen stated calmly. And provide copies to us, of course. Of course, Isabella agreed, a little too readily. I'm not looking for trouble, just, fairness. As Isabella left, Eliza felt a chill. This woman was a viper, but a potentially useful one. Damien had truly underestimated the fallout from his tangled web of lies. He had not one but two scorned women to contend with, and one of them seemed to know where some of his financial skeletons were buried. That evening, Eliza sat by Leo's crib, watching him sleep. The world felt impossibly complicated, filled with deceitful men and scheming women. But Leo was simple pure. She stroked his soft cheek. The preliminary DNA results were due any day. Whatever they revealed, Eliza knew one thing: Damien Sterling's attempts to control the narrative were about to collide head-on with irrefutable biological truth. And Isabella Rossi, whether she intended to or not, might have just handed Eliza another weapon in the escalating war. The stakes were rising, and Eliza surprisingly felt ready for the fight. The air in Marcus Thorne's office was electric. Eliza sat opposite her Uncle Victoria, beside her a bastion of stoic support. On the mahogany desk between them lay two sealed envelopes delivered by courier that morning. One was from the lab chosen by Damien's legal team, the other from the independent lab Marcus had insisted upon. The preliminary DNA paternity test results. Ready? Marcus asked, his gaze on Eliza. Eliza took a deep breath, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She nodded. This was it. The moment of irrefutable truth, or so she hoped. Marcus picked up the first envelope from Damien's chosen lab and slit it open with a silver letter opener. He scanned the document, his expression unreadable. Then he picked up the second envelope from their lab and did the same. He laid both reports side by side on the desk, smoothing them out. Finally, he looked up, his eyes meeting Eliza's. Well, he said, a grim satisfaction in his voice. It appears Nurse Agnes Kowalski is owed an apology, and perhaps a commendation for her astute observation. Victoria leaned forward. Well, what does it say, Marcus? Both reports are unequivocal, Marcus stated, tapping the documents. Probability of paternity for Damien Sterling, 0.00%. He is conclusively excluded as the biological father of Leo Thorne Sterling. Marcus deliberately used Eliza's maiden name alongside Sterling. Relief, cold and sharp, washed over Eliza, so potent it almost buckled her. It wasn't the relief of joy, but the relief of validation. She wasn't mad. Nurse Agnes wasn't mistaken. Damien had lied or been profoundly ignorant about something fundamental. The entire edifice of their shared parenthood was a fiction. So the blood type was just the tip of the iceberg, Victoria murmured, shaking her head. The man is a walking fraud. This changes everything, Eliza said, her voice quiet but firm. The divorce, the settlements, everything. Indeed, Marcus agreed. Damien's lawyers have already been informed. I expect they'll try to bury this demand confidentiality agreements, but the legal implications are significant. His claims for any custodial rights are essentially nil. The prenuptial agreement's clauses on infidelity are now cemented by his deception regarding paternity, which could be argued as a deeper fraud. The fight, however, was far from over. Damien, when confronted with the undeniable results, didn't crumble as Eliza had half expected. Instead, he dug in his lawyers, proposing an immediate, generous financial settlement for Eliza, in exchange for her complete discretion and an agreement to list him as Leo's father on the birth certificate for the sake of the child's social standing and future. He wants to buy my silence and legitimize his lie. Eliza was aghast. He wants to brand Leo with a fiction for the rest of his life. Absolutely not. His concern is sterling innovations, Marcus explained. A messy public divorce, coupled with a paternity scandal of this magnitude, could spook investors. His personal brand is intrinsically linked to the company's. Then perhaps his personal brand deserves to take the hit, Victoria said icily. But as the legal wrangling continued, a new, more pressing question began to haunt Eliza's waking hours and sleepless nights. If Damien wasn't Leo's father, who was? Her mind, with reluctance and a deep, aching shame, began to sift through the past. Her marriage to Damien had been deteriorating for years before Leo's conception. The emotional distance had grown into a chasm, their physical intimacy dwindling to almost nothing. She had been lonely, starved for affection, for genuine connection. And there had been someone. A brief, regrettable interlude. It was a time she had tried to forget, a lapse in judgment, born of loneliness and Damien's increasing emotional abandonment. Julian Vance, an artist. He was everything Damien was, not gentle, attentive, passionate about his work, seemingly unconcerned with wealth or status. They had met at a charity art auction Eliza had organized. He had been one of the featured artists. There was an instant connection, a spark of warmth in the cold landscape of her marriage. It had been short-lived, a handful of clandestine meetings over a few weeks, nearly 2 years ago, now ending when guilt and the realization of the recklessness of her actions had overwhelmed her. She had ended it abruptly, decisively, and had never seen or spoken to him again. She had convinced herself it was a sealed chapter, a mistake she would take to her grave. Could it be the timing? It was horribly, terrifyingly plausible. The thought made her physically ill. If Julian was Leo's father, it added another layer of complexity, another secret she would have to confront. She had been unfaithful, yes, but under duress of a sort, in a marriage that was already a hollow shell. A truth Damien himself had inadvertently confirmed with his affair with Isabella and his lies about their separation. Still, the shame was a heavy cloak. Eliza! Victoria's voice, laced with concern, broke through her tortured thoughts. They were in Leo's nursery, the late afternoon sun, casting long shadows. You've been 1,000 miles away all week. This business with Damien is taking its toll. But there's something else, isn't there? Eliza looked at her mother, her confidant, the one person who had never judged her. Tears welled in her eyes. Mother, she whispered. There's a possibility about Leo's father. Victoria listened patiently as Eliza haltingly, painfully confessed her brief affair with Julian Vance. There were no recriminations in Victoria's eyes, only a deep sadness and understanding. "My poor girl," Victoria said softly, taking Eliza's hand. "You were in an impossible situation. A loveless marriage, a neglectful husband, who it turns out was deceiving you on multiple fronts." "But what do I do?" Eliza cried. "Leo deserves to know who his father is, and Julian. Does he have a right to know he has a son?" "One step at a time, darling," Victoria soothed. "First we finalize this divorce with Damien. We secure your and Leo's future, free from that man's influence. Then and only then do we consider how or if you approach Julian Vance. We need to find out where he is, what his circumstances are." Marcus Thorne, when discreetly informed, was pragmatic. "Julian Vance. I remember the name from the auction committee. Let my investigators do a quiet background check. We need to know what we're dealing with before any contact is made." Meanwhile, Isabella Rossi's promised information began to arrive in cryptic installments to Marcus's office photocopies of offshore bank statements with staggering sums, though Damien's direct link was obscured by layers of shell corporations, transcripts of hushed phone calls hinting at insider trading, and a particularly damning audio recording of Damien boasting to Isabella about how he'd outsmarted them all, regarding a recent acquisition implying illicit tactics. "This is dynamite," Marcus said, reviewing the material. "Enough to trigger serious investigations by financial regulators if it gets into the right hands. Ms. Rossi is either very brave or very foolish to share this. Or she has an agenda we haven't fully grasped yet." Eliza cared little for Isabella's motives. If it helped bring Damien's empire of deceit crashing down, so be it. Her focus was on Leo and on the daunting prospect of contacting Julian Vance. The final confrontation with Damien Sterling was not the explosive showdown Eliza had envisioned. There were no raised voices, no dramatic accusations hurled across a boardroom. Instead, it took place in the sterile, neutral territory of Marcus Thorne's largest conference room, a space designed for high-stakes negotiations, not emotional catharsis. Damien sat opposite Eliza, flanked by his team of lawyers. He looked older, diminished. The usual arrogant glint in his eyes was replaced by a weary defensiveness. The undeniable DNA results, coupled with the mounting evidence of his financial improprieties, leaked Eliza suspected by a combination of Isabella's machinations and Marcus's strategic pressure had clearly taken their toll. Sterling Innovations' stock had dipped, and rumors were rife in the financial district. "Eliza!" Damien began, his voice raspy. "My lawyers have advised me that your terms are excessive." Marcus Thorne answered, his tone like Arctic ice. "Mittel, Sterling, given the circumstances, the public humiliation, the emotional distress, the flagrant breach of the prenuptial agreement, and the profound fraud concerning paternity, we consider our terms remarkably restrained. Mrs. Sterling is entitled to significantly more." The terms included a substantial financial settlement for Eliza, full ownership of their city penthouse and the Hamptons estate, and most importantly, sole legal and physical custody of Leo. Damien would have no parental rights. His name would not appear on the birth certificate, and any contact with Leo would be at Eliza's sole discretion under strictly supervised conditions if she ever deemed it appropriate. Furthermore, a gag order would be placed on Damien, preventing him from ever publicly discussing Eliza or Leo. Damien's lead counsel, a notoriously aggressive lawyer named Hartman, blustered, "This is an outrage. Mr. Sterling is prepared to be generous, But this is punitive. It is reflective of the damage inflicted, Marcus countered coolly. And that's before we discuss the other documents Ms. Rossi so kindly provided. Documents that the SEC and the IRS might find particularly illuminating. Cooperate now, Mr. Sterling, and perhaps those documents remain private. Fight this, and all bets are off. In the weeks that followed, the divorce was finalized with surprising speed. Damien Sterling, stripped of a significant portion of his liquid assets and facing intense scrutiny from regulatory bodies. Isabella, it turned out, had anonymously sent her evidence far and wide once she realized Eliza wouldn't actively champion her personal compensation claims, retreated from public life. His empire, built on aggressive tactics and carefully cultivated illusions, began to show cracks. His carefully constructed world was crumbling piece by piece. Isabella Rossi, for her part, vanished. Some said she'd moved to Monaco with a hefty severance package Damien had been forced to pay to avoid a wrongful termination suit she'd threatened. Others whispered she was cooperating with authorities in exchange for immunity. Eliza didn't care. Isabella had been a catalyst, a pawn, and ultimately irrelevant to Eliza's future. With Damien finally excised from her life, Eliza turned to the remaining aching question, Julian Vance. She found him through a mutual acquaintance from the art world. He agreed to meet her for coffee, his voice on the phone hesitant, surprised to hear from her after so long. They met in a quiet cafe far from the prying eyes of the society pages. Julian looked much the same. Kind eyes, a gentle smile, paint smudges on his worn jacket. He was nervous, and so was Eliza. After awkward pleasantries, Eliza took a deep breath. "Julian," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "There's no easy way to say this. When we were together, nearly 2 years ago, I became pregnant." Julian stared at her, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. The color drained from his face. "Pregnant?" he whispered. "But you never said anything. I thought, with your husband." "My ex-husband, Damien, is not Leo's biological father," Eliza said gently. "I have a son, Julian. His name is Leo. He's nearly 3 months old, and there is a very strong possibility that he is your son." The shock on Julian's face was profound. He set down his cup with a clatter, his mind clearly reeling. He asked questions, halting, fragmented queries about the timing, about Damien, about Leo. Eliza answered honestly, patiently, laying bare the complicated, painful truth of her marriage and Leo's birth. She didn't spare herself admitting her own loneliness and mistakes. When she finished, there was a long silence. Julian looked out the window, his expression unreadable. Eliza's heart ached. She had potentially just shattered this man's peace. Finally, he turned back to her, his eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions, shock, confusion, and something else. A hesitant wonder. "A son," he said almost to himself. "I have a son." "I believe so," Eliza said softly. "I'm prepared to arrange a DNA test, of course, if it's what you want." Julian nodded slowly. Yes, I think I need to know." He looked at Eliza, a new intensity in his gaze. "And if he is my son, what then, Eliza?" "Then," Eliza said. Meeting his gaze, "We figure it out. Together. For Leo, he deserves to know his father and to have a father who loves him." The DNA test confirmed it. Julian Vance was Leo's biological father. There was no easy path forward. There were difficult conversations, moments of fear and uncertainty. But there was also a cautious hope. Julian, after the initial shock, embraced the idea of fatherhood with a quiet joy that touched Eliza deeply. He was gentle, patient, and utterly captivated by Leo from the moment he first held him. Eliza did not remarry. Her focus was on Leo, on building a new life based on honesty and love, not on societal expectations or financial gain. She established a foundation for single mothers, using her considerable settlement to help women who lacked her resources. She found a quiet strength and purpose she had never known. Victoria Thorne watched her daughter blossom with pride. Marcus Thorne managed Eliza's affairs with his usual diligence, ensuring her and Leo's financial security. And so the glittering facade of the Sterling dynasty crumbled under the weight of its own deceit. Damien's mistake was more than a Freudian slip. It was the catalyst that exposed a web of lies, leading to a truth that reshaped futures and redefined family. Eliza, armed with courage and a mother's fierce love, navigated the treacherous waters of betrayal to find not just justice, but a new beginning for herself and her son Leo. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the most shocking betrayals can lead to the most profound liberations. What did you think of Nurse Agnes's bombshell? Could you predict the twists? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of drama, resilience, and ultimate triumph captivated you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who loves a story of fortunes reversed, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales of intricate lives and astonishing revelations. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update from our channel.